Sociopathic mother-in-law next door entry. Today's date is Tuesday the 20th of May. So in the last entry finished talking about the first 16 years of living with the Beacon, moving house, renovating houses, and a little bit more background around the controlling husk, and just a couple more things which are kind of important around that period. So this 16 years, the first 16 years of living with the Beacon, so this would have been from 1999 to 2015. 2015 was when I moved up and made a big break up to the countryside, so to speak. So a couple more things about that period, that 16-year period, when we were still living in the same town as the husk and stepdad. Firstly, once I got to a certain age, probably around about 30, maybe a little bit older, I kind of just started developing more of a friendship with stepdad. And I'd regularly go for a drink with him and watch the football, probably regular sort of outings with him on Sunday afternoons after dinner. So the Beacon and I would go across to the Husk's house on a Sunday afternoon for lunch, and then I'd sneak off to the pub for a couple of drinks with stepdad. And that friendship with him kind of went from strength to strength from that point on. We were always, even before then, we always connected, but it went from strength to strength around about 2005, I would say, roughly. So that was sort of a 10-year from 2005 to 2015, which is when we moved away. So that 10 years, our sort of friendship went from strength to strength, and to the point where not only would I just nip out for a drink with him on a Sunday afternoon after Sunday lunch at the Husk's house, but I would generally actually just make an effort to just go out with him as a just randomly, and we became kind of joint at the hip when it came to family social dues, weddings and the like, and other birthdays and big dues like that. We were sort of partners in crime. We were always getting up to mischief, and really, really good bond. The other thing to mention about that period, that same 10-year period, or maybe, I would say the same 10-year period, we also, so obviously before I go into this bit, you'll also notice there that we were going over to the Husks for Sunday lunch. And so once you get a bit older, you kind of on a Sunday, you just want to go to your parents and have your lunch made for you, a couple of glasses of wine, and fall asleep or go to the pub. So we were seeing a lot of the Husk during this 10-year period, just regularly seeing her because it suited us. And that might sound selfish, but that's fine. We don't have any duty. We liked going over on a Sunday, so we did. And because she saw us regularly, and generally speaking, you know, her needs were being met. We were going over to her house, the world revolves around her, so as long as everybody's putting the effort in to make her the centre of attention, she's happy. Obviously we didn't realise this to this degree at the time, but yeah, that 10-year period from 2005 to 2015, we did see a lot of the husk and stepdad. Lived in the same town. Once you get a bit older, you start to, you know, your social life becomes a bit thinner, and you're happy to just do things like that on a Sunday. Got nothing else to do on the day off, so to speak. So anyway, another thing that we started to do around the same period was go on holiday with them. And, you know, this would start off with sort of long weekends. I remember going to Dublin with them on a long weekend. And, you know, we had a really, really good time. Again, the beacon is happy to spend time with her mum and her stepdad. She's got no problem with that. When she's happy, the beacon's happy. And obviously I was, you know, I had a cracking relationship with stepdad, so everybody's happy. We did have some good times. So long weekends away, then to sort of the Lake District. We had a caravan, and the husk would hire a static home on the same park, and we would obviously spend a week together. We also had a trip down to Stratford upon Avon, where we paid for the whole holiday, not the whole holiday, but the whole accommodation and travel part of the holiday we paid for. Because this is when our kind of money problems start to show themselves. And when I say problems, I mean just that she didn't have much, which was odd because she would always you know, put ridiculous amounts of money in Christmas cards and stuff like that. Easily putting £150 in your Christmas card. Bear in mind that there's 4 adult kids and a you know, soon to be granddaughter. So she's spending, and plus presents. So she's spending, you know, possibly £1,000 just on Christmas. And it's like, no wonder you've got no money now. It's just a complete waste. We're adults, we've all got jobs and houses and mortgages, and we're all financially stable. We don't need your money. It's just a complete waste. So yeah, it was round about 2014 when we went on this one particular holiday where we paid for all the accommodation and the transport to get there. And you know, I think at this point I was starting to feel a little bit like I was there, like I had a role to occupy stepdad while the mother and the daughter could go out and do whatever they wanted to do, you know, whether that's going on a day trip or going for walks or whatever, because stepdad didn't want to do that. You know, he was quite sort of set in his ways. He just wanted to sit and watch the telly and then go for a pint at the end of the afternoon. So I kind of felt like that my role was to occupy him, which meant I was losing out on a lot of other things I wanted to do. So I was getting a little bit fed up with these holidays, to be honest. And then in 2015 or 2014 we decided that we would take them to Mallorca, because they hadn't had an abroad holiday for so long. So guess who paid for that as well? Yeah, we paid for that. We paid for the accommodation. Certainly the accommodation. I can't remember if we paid for the flights. possibly not, but certainly the whole accommodation. This was accommodation for 5 people. We paid for the whole lot for a week. And, had a decent time on that holiday, no complaints. But I was obviously I was aware of what she was like, but I was happy to put the effort in and have a family, or what appeared to be a family. So that's a bit more important background of how we've always been. We've always been good, a good daughter and a good son-in-law. Going over and above, I would say. Way over and above. Not obligated to go on holiday with your parents. You're not obligated to pay for it. That should be a total privilege for them. But anyway, fast forward. So in 2015, we moved to where we live now, and a little bit rural, in the countryside. And then for the next few years, the husk would come up regularly to help with childcare, which was basically picking her up from school. The little school was in the village, so she'd come up, pick her up from school, and go and sit in our house. But we only asked her to do that, I think it was a couple of times a week. But she got to spend time with a granddaughter, and I don't think that's too much of an ask of your parent to do that. So then obviously my daughter got to a certain age where she didn't need that, and then I got more flexibility at work, and I was able to work from home a little bit. This is all round about, 2017, 2018. And there was always the odd little incident where, the husk would go into one of her huffs, and she would normally put this across by just not texting the beacon. So the husk would text her every two days, I would say, every 2 or 3 days, for no reason, just, you must have too much time on your hands. And then the beacon could always tell if she was in the bad books, because those texts would dry up, and then one would come and it wouldn't have a kiss on the end of it. So the husk would always put a kiss on the end of every single text. And then that's a way of being passive aggressive or manipulative. When you're in a huff, you just don't put the kiss on the end, and she knows that gives the signal to the beacon that she's needs to try harder, that she's failed, that she's not passing the test. So this still went on, but because she's at a distance, she lives in a completely different town, and we don't rely on her for we don't need to rely on her for childcare anymore. Then you can just ignore her, and that's what the beacon used to do. Generally speaking, it was just, I was going to let her get through a huff, and eventually she'll come out the other end, and everything will be back to normal. And that's what would happen. But why should the beacon have to go through that? She have to go through that festering period. So it became, so that it was always there in the background. It then became more and more clear that the husk, I wouldn't say it was having money issues, but she was making it clear to us that she didn't have much money, and that she was worried about the future. Again, I've mentioned how reckless she is with money, just throwing it away at Christmas. And that's always been the case. She just buys on impulse. Obviously, as this story goes on, you'll understand how much of her decision making is pure impulse. So she would always just buy on impulse and end up wasting money. And there was on one occasion, she had actually done this, and we managed to reverse it when we found out. She had actually, our house was paid off. The mortgage on our house was paid off. Just a little modest 3-bedroom terrace house on a quiet housing estate in the town. But our mortgage was paid off, and we found out that she had remortgaged her house, but it wasn't a normal remortgage where you would pay whatever a mortgage rate is, 4%, whatever. It was one of these ridiculous ones where, let's just say you get 30 grand, but they own half of your house, and the longer it takes you to pay that back, the more that half ownership increases on their part. So eventually she's going to have no house left. And that might not be exactly it in terms of how it worked, but it was something along those lines where when the Beacon and I found out, we were like, whoa, going to have to stop this, because she's going to end up not owning a house, and just for the sake of 30 grand. And that's also the Beacon's and Roadkill's inheritance. And I mean, obviously she should be enjoying what she's got, the husk. But you can't just throw it away like that. These are the types of impulsive decisions she would make without asking anybody. So thankfully, the Beacon and I managed to intervene and reversed it. There must have been some sort of cooling off period or something like that, or whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, we intervened and stopped that happening. And the only reason she wanted to do it was for a holiday, or for some, just a bit of security, just have money in the bank, or something ridiculous like that. So she had done that in the past. So when it got to around about 2018, let's just say, and she started dropping hints that she didn't have much money, and she would drop hints by, when it came to Christmas time, I won't have much money for your card. That's what you should have done in the first place, husk. So anyway, we were on another one of these holidays, these long weekends, and it was for her birthday. And just very, very quickly, let's just go back in time to 2011. In 2011, we went on a long weekend holiday for her 60th birthday, and it was also my daughter's first birthday. And went to the Lake District, and we were all stopping in the same house, including Roadkill and her husband. And during that holiday, on the first night of the holiday, she went into one of our mega huffs and walked out of the pub. And do you know the reason why? Because she had stopped smoking, or she was trying to stop smoking. And when we went to the first pub, I went outside and had a cigarette, and she went into a mega huff because I was smoking and she wasn't. And that's no word of a lie. And then she wandered off and went down to the lake. Nobody knew where she was, and she was there for however long, the lakeside. And when she came back, she was in a good mood. I'm thinking, how are you in a good mood? It's like, do you not realise what you've just done? You've just pissed everybody off. Sorry, you've just annoyed everybody. And that's what she's capable of doing. Just in the moment, just for no reason. Nobody's done anything wrong. If you want a cigarette, go and have a cigarette. And bizarrely, that lakeside, there's a pub there. That lakeside has become her special place. I'm thinking, how the hell is that your special place? It's where you went to in a huff. But anyway, I digress. Also, but I'm pleased I've remembered this, because also on that holiday, like I say, it was her 60th birthday, and we ended up going to the pub, which was her special place, for lunch for her birthday. And the Beacon and Roadkill had gone to the bother of ordering a lovely birthday cake from one of the local shops, and they went to pick it up, and they were doing all of this on the sly, obviously, so she could give her a birthday cake after lunch. And you know, they had arranged for the pub to, you know, the pub staff to bring it out, and she must have cottoned on somehow that they were going to do that. And she said, before this happened, she said something like, "I don't want a cake. You better not have gotten us a cake." And it was something like that. And obviously it just completely deflated the Beacon. Because it's like, God, do you know what she's gone through to organise this and run around on a holiday and get you a cake and all the rest of it? And I think when the cake came, that was her first words, was, "I told her I didn't want one." This is what she's like. She's capable of completely ruining a birthday. Now you understand why I was concerned about my wedding. So anyway, I had digressed there, but it's a story worth telling. So back to, where was I? Back to around about 2018, went on another long weekend away, all of us, including Roadkill and her husband. And it was the Husk's birthday. And the story goes, right, so we were in a caravan, our caravan, and Roadkill was in her caravan, and the Husk and stepdad were in a static caravan thing. And the Roadkill had gone back to her caravan for the night, you know, gone to bed, and we were sitting having one final drink with the Husk. And all of a sudden, she just started, well, I was going to say crying, but now I know they were just crocodile tears. She doesn't know how to cry. So anyway, we're sitting there, and she started crying. And we were, "What's wrong?" The Beacon and I. And she started just going on and on and on about how worried she was about money. She was worried about her house. She was worried about things like the boiler breaking down, the windows needed replacing, and all the rest of it. Like, you sort of, you know, all of these sort of anxieties about the house and not having much money. And just to put you in the picture, the house was not that bad. It didn't need new windows, and fair enough, the boiler it needed attention every now and again. But other than that, the house it was just like most old people's houses. It just needed a good refresh. But yeah, she started crying and telling us about all of her money woes. And we said things like, well, if you need some help financially, we can give you help financially. And obviously with her stubborn guardedness, She didn't want any. No, you can't help. I can't take. You can't pay for things. So we try to explain that. Ultimately she needs to be happy, and ultimately it's the kids' house. It's their inheritance. So any money that's invested by the Beacon and I, any money that's invested at the house, we would get back eventually when it's sold, because obviously you'd like to think you'd get your investment back. But that kind of just conversation ended and nothing was said again. And again, it's really important and worth pointing out that Roadkill never gets any of these situations presented to her. It's always the Beacon and I who are dealing with our problems, who are dealing with her mood swings and actually trying to help, taking her on holiday, dealing with her, these money problems and anxieties and stuff like that. Roadkill never ever sees any of that. It's definitely there's some sort of strange dynamic going on there. Anyway, that's I'll ponder that later. So this weekend, it's for the Husk's birthday, and she drops this bombshell on us. And obviously it's getting to the point where she's crying, or she appeared to be crying. It's getting to that point that obviously it's going to impact on the Beacon and myself. So we were talking, the Beacon and I would have regular conversations about that. And then 2020 hit, and the lockdowns and everything else. And obviously everything just got scuppered, as everybody knows. So during this period, obviously, we were very, very uncomfortable with the fact that you could just be isolated from your parents at will. And whatever anybody thinks about what was going on, nobody wants to be isolated from their parents. So, as a result of these conversations that we had previously with the Husk crying, and with the contributing factor of the 2020 situation, we decided to ask her if she wanted to come and live not in our house, but in a converted outbuilding in our back garden. So we've got a decent sized back garden, a small outbuilding, and we planned the idea was that we could convert that outbuilding into a really small 1-bedroom cottage, and that the two of them could live there independently, but they'd be on our land, in our garden. Because stepdad, he was terrible with money as well. He had racked up debt on a credit card. The pair of them were just as bad as each other. So we really were bailing them out here. There's no other way to put it. They clearly did have money issues, no stability, and it wasn't going to take much to put them in the up the creek without a paddle. So, and when we found out how much debt stepdad had racked up, it was obviously going to be a big factor in how everything was going to work, because not only did we have to finance the conversion of this outbuilding, we also had to deal with the debt and whatever else was hidden under the rug. So obviously there had to be full transparency. But anyway, we put this to them, and I mean, again, impulse. She just said yes immediately. But we wanted to take our time. So it was more like floating the idea, you know. We didn't just ask her, she said yes, and then, you know, the next day we got the architect round. It wasn't like that. We floated the idea, she said yes straight away, and then the Beacon and I spent probably a year contemplating. Excuse me. And obviously forcing them to contemplate as well, because I'm not sure stepdad had a say in it. She owned the house that they lived in. It was 100% her house. He had nothing but debt, and you know, I'm not sure he would have had a say in whether or not he was coming. But obviously moving them up here was going to be a big move for them. They've never, ever, ever lived anywhere other than a big town. So we were more considerate of this than what they were themselves. But obviously stepdad, I don't even think he'd give it a thought. It was just like, just tell us when I'm going and I'll go. So I was more than happy to do it. Remember, I'm the protector. I wanted to help my parents. So you can see where the decision making is coming from in terms of my psyche or subconscious. I knew she was moody, we knew she had a bit of a chip on her shoulder, but we thought that this would make her happy. And obviously the Beacon, I'm the daddy now. You know, she's looking after her mum again. You can absolutely see why we made this decision. And all we wanted to do was make her happy. We naively thought that taking away all of her money problems, giving her a brand new little house or little cottage, so to speak, without any worries of, you know, any maintenance worries. We thought that to take away all of her money problems, she would be in a nice, safe, little quiet environment, good transport links, nonetheless, and we naively thought that would make her happy. As time went on, we started to wonder whether converting this outbuilding was the best idea in terms of practicality and how much it was going to cost and whether or not it was going to be, you know, kind of the right type of building when it was finished in terms of, you know, how economical it would be. So I came across a company who manufacture and build bespoke wooden lodges, you know, the type you'd get on a holiday park, clad in, all sorts of cladding, but the one that we chose was clad in oak, with a proper pitched roof on it. And we designed it ourselves in terms of the layout and the size. We spent many, many, many hours getting the design right and making sure it was going to function properly in terms of the husk and stepdad's needs and where it would go in the garden and blah, blah, blah. The only downside of this, and also, so the other plus side, very, very economical, very insulated, and very, very quick to build, and all done in one go by the same company. You know, no project management. But like I say, you have the free rein to design it exactly how you want it, whatever shape and size. The downside was the cost. So, not going to go into the actual numbers, but let's just try and give an idea. So the Husk sold her house in the big town, which was just a modest 3-bedroom terrace house on a 1970s housing estate, and she sold that, but obviously she had to give half of the money to Roadkill, because obviously it's her inheritance. Ultimately it's her inheritance, so she couldn't use Roadkill's inheritance to build this house on our property, because then it would just belong to us. Roadkill's inheritance would therefore belong to us. So she gave half to Roadkill, and then she gave the other half to us to help finance this lodge. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough money. So what did us two naive mugs do? Put our hands in our pocket to raise the rest of the money. And this was a significant amount of money that we had to raise in a very, very short space of time, once we realised we definitely wanted to do it. And we were sure we wanted to spend the money because we were sure that this was the right type of building and the right type of investment. So we had our savings, our life savings, and I remember this was during the 2020 situation, or 2020, 2021, and working from home increased. So I sold my car, I sold my caravan, and I sold pretty much everything that wasn't nailed down, if I'm going to speak the truth. So I had no car, no caravan. That's our family holidays. All of our plans put on hold. All of the DIY plans and home improvements that we had for our house. Everything was spent on financing this lodge. And we told the Husk this, and we said we're happy to do it because at the end of the day we're investing in our home. This lodge will increase the value of the property, but also, later on down the line when the lodge isn't needed, when you're vacated, in other words, we might get a little bit of money back from renting it out as a holiday let and what have you. But believe me, I'd rather just have the money, because that money's not going to come back any time in our lifetime, and it's going to have to be earned. If we hire it out as a holiday let, that money has to be earned. It doesn't just land on your lap. So we explained this to her to try and make her feel better, and we said we were happy to invest the money. And and the other thing was, and obviously you've got to have open and honest conversations when you're doing this about finances, but other stuff. And we said we need to think about stepdad, because at the end of the day, he's not our responsibility. Yes, he is stepdad, but it's, you know, we just give them assurances that, because he's got his own family, he's got his own sons and daughters. When the husk is gone, if the husk goes first, you can't just expect us to be the carer for stepdad. He's got his own sons and daughters. It's a difficult topic, and people might have different opinions on it. But it is true that you can't expect us to be his carer. So anyway, we said that we were prepared to do that, and that if the husk went first, then stepdad would have a home for however long he needed it. And again, I just think that's remarkable that we did that, personally. Again, the Beacon and I taking on all of the responsibilities. So Roadkill got her half of the house sale, bought a motorhome. Is now enjoying her freedom in that motorhome. And we ended up spending our whole life savings, including Beacon's inheritance, on this lodge. And the husk, I've tried to explain this to her in the heat of the moment. She needs to understand that effectively that's not any of her money that's paid for the lodge. Because when she gave that half the money to Roadkill, and Roadkill bought a motorhome, she doesn't own that motorhome, does she? The husk doesn't own the motorhome. It's Roadkill's. It's her money, her inheritance, her motorhome. So Beacon's inheritance, Beacon's money, Beacon's lodge, all of the money has come from the Beacon and myself. And I really, really, really don't think she can grasp that and comprehend that we've literally, or the Beacon has literally spent her inheritance on her own mother. Again, like I say, much rather have just had the money, the cash. But what can you do? So we sort of did all of the, did what you needed to do and sold the house and started the building work. My drive and my garden was like a building site for 8 weeks. But 8 weeks is not bad, all done and dusted in 8 weeks. And the build-up, before the building work started, I had to level all of the ground in preparation, and I did that myself. I hired a digger, and I was out there in the freezing cold. Because again, I would do as much as I can myself. So, my own blood and sweat and tears went into it. And eventually, so let me get this straight, February 2022. Let me just think, is that right? Yes, that's right. February 2022. The pair of them moved into this brand new lodge in a beautiful garden, in a beautiful village, all brand new, with their own little section of garden to enjoy, with views over the fields and, free land, free house, paid for by us. And not only was all of that just handed to them on a plate, we also, the Beacon and I, paid for additional kitchen units, and I built them. I built her a breakfast bar. We helped pay for all new furniture, and when that furniture, when we picked up that furniture, we built it all. We literally moved all of her belongings from her house to the lodge in the we had a truck and a big trailer, so we moved her. We took all of her furniture and belongings the day before she moved, put all of our clothes in the wardrobes, put all of our kitchenware in the kitchen. We basically unpacked the day before she moved. So in other words, we did everything. She literally just got up one day, got in her car with her husband and her dog, and drove to our new house, and everything was there, done, finished. Take a seat, put the kettle on. That's how easy it was. And I think I'll end that entry there.